just for the first part. So if you get a notice that it says you're recording, FYI, that's why. All right, now the question is the sharing part here. Let's see.
Yep.
You can see that part?
Yep.
Go away. Okay. Let me get to the point of, I'm not used to Google Slides. Where do I do the like full screen? Can they remind me?
Isn't it like Alt Enter or something?
I'm so not used to Google Slides. I apologize. Oh, slideshow, it's behind. That's why. There it is. Okay.
Got it, Amber. Good.
Thank you. Yeah, it was hiding, so I couldn't find it. All right, so welcome everyone. It's awesome to see so many people here. This is great, especially as we head into the spring, summer, and fall, which tends to be our flooding season. So it's awesome to have everyone. So this is our organization as residents working against Huron River flooding. It's just the date for our meeting. So what I'm gonna do, like I said, just give you kind of some background, a little bit of who we are. So my name is Amber Bismack. I'm the director and co-founder with Diane of our organization. We started back in spring of 2020 after that horrible January 2020 flood, right before all the pandemic and everything. So we started with the intention of actually trying to figure out what's going on with the water. And in the meantime, we've collected lots of people to help us. So we have Andrea on, who's our secretary and awesome taking notes. Jeff Henry works on our website. Carrie helps us with all the data collection upstream, which we'll talk about. And Maureen and Stephanie have been helping with the FEMA grants that were submitted back in January for some folks to elevate homes. So just kind of quick background, we started with the intention, which we do this amongst many other things now, to actually partner with the Thriving Earth Exchange. So the Thriving Earth Exchange is part of the American Geological Union. And what they do, their role actually is to partner communities like ours who are struggling with various environmental issues to, I'm going to ask you to mute, please, to communities like ours that are struggling with environmental issues. They partner us with different scientists in different capacities, depending on what they need. So for us, we've been partnered actually with 3 hydrologists. So we have Claire Zarakas, who's up here. She is our community science fellow, who has been incredibly important to actually get this set up. So she's the one who found and partnered us with 3 different hydrologists. We have Wendy Robertson, who came down from Central Michigan today, actually, to help with the gauges. Scott Dirks, who is a consultant down in Ann Arbor and has helped come out and helped. And then Rod Lammers, who's also at Central Michigan and will be helping with some modeling pieces for us. So that was the original start. That's certainly something that we're doing. That's not necessarily what we're going to focus on today, but that's definitely a big part of what we do. And this is the piece that kind of Carrie helps with when kind of coordinating. So quick shout out to the folks that came out today to actually help. We did actually install all the gauges. So they're in and we're collecting data for the new season, which is awesome, to figure out where the water's coming in, how much is coming in, to hope that we can do something to hold the water back. So you got some crazy pictures of us. We got a picture of the group, and sadly Bob Sifton had left, so we photoshopped Bob in, so he was here today too. So those of all of us, the crazy folks out in the river today in the not terribly cold, but not super cold, warm weather, trying to do that work. So today, though, what we're here to talk about is the flood level change that happened at the Huron River, the Hamburg Road Bridge gauge within the Huron River. So this gauge is set up and monitored by the National Weather Service and NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association. And prior to November 2nd, this gauge was determined to be minimum flood level of 6.5 feet. And at the November 2nd Hamburg Township Board of Trustees meeting, the vote happened to actually recommend the change to increase it to 7 feet. So that's why we're here today. So as of right now, what's considered flood level, a minimum flood level, is 7 feet. So I just wanted to what I'm going to do now is give you kind of an overview as to why this happened, the rationale behind it from my understanding, talking with township folks. I think we have at least one on the call, can also speak to this if needed or wants to. But then I'd like to open up for a broader conversation. So during that meeting, I was there, a few other folks were there. And during that meeting, what happened was they were updating the FRAP, the Flood Response Action Plan. And in doing so, they also had a recommendation within that packet to increase or raise the flood level to 7 feet. So I just wanted to put a quote in here. You can go onto this live stream, and these slides will be posted after. You can go onto this live stream of that meeting and actually listen to it. But I just want to put a quote in reference to this work from Chief Duffney, who said during that meeting, what was happening on the river and around the lakes wasn't really lining up to what should have been happening as far as township action. So myself and Supervisor Hold met with the NOAA rep or spoke with him, and we went through. So that's reflected in Article 5, and then our response in Article 6 to more accurately reflect what's happening in real life and what actions we need to take. The previous one didn't seem to be accurate. So the core of this, from my understanding, this is all from my understanding, this is from conversations with some township folks, with Pat, and looking at the various documents, is that the decision was made because the thought was that what was considered 6.5 feet, what's considered minimum flood level, which I'll show you for the National Weather Service, doesn't align to what's actually happening in our community at 6.5 feet, which I'll point out. So some background on what this is. So when we're talking about it, we're talking about right here between the yellow and the orange. That's the minor flood level. It used to be 6.5 feet. As you can see, it's now 7, or it says flood stage is 7 feet right there. So what this means moving forward is that once the river level at the Hamburg Road Bridge gets to 6.5 feet, that is when we will all get notices of the potential of flooding through the National Weather Service. The township goes into kind of an action stage, which I'll show you what that looks like in a moment, but then it's not considered flood stage until 7 feet. So when they're talking about trying to align to what the language says versus what's happening in our community, this is the language they're basing it off of, which is from the National Weather Service. I just copied and pasted screenshots from it. And so this is what they define as these different categories. So I'm going to go through a couple of them. So action stage, which is now 6.5 feet, says the stage which when reached by a rising stream represents a level where the National Weather Service or a partner or user needs to take some type of mitigation action in preparation for possible significant hydrologic activity, okay? Minor flooding, which is our 7 feet, is defined as having minimal or no property damage, but possibly some public threat. So at this point, a flood advisory product is issued by the National Weather Service to the public of the potential of like some flooding events. So they have a list of examples here of potential conditions for the minor flooding. So we can see we have water over banks and in yards, no buildings flooded, but some water may be under the buildings built on stilts. For those of us with crawl spaces, floating foundations, we might have water there. Personal property in low-lying areas need to be moved or it will get wet. Water overtopping roads, but not very deep or fast flowing. Water in campgrounds or on bike paths, inconvenience or nuisance flooding. Small part of the airstrip flooded, we don't have to worry about that. 1 or 2 homes in the lowest parts of the town may be cut off or get a little water in their crawl space or the home. So this is now our 7-foot parameter. So at 7 feet, this is where the township says we should be seeing these things happen. It was 6.5, now 7. So there's other categories for moderate and major flooding. I'm not going to go into those, but our conversation is focusing more on the minor flooding. I will say all of this terminology I pulled right from this website, and I'll put that in the chat once I stop sharing my screen so that you can go and peruse that as well. So the township also referenced another description from NOAA. This one's from the National Severe Storms Laboratory. And this is where they define similar descriptions for flooding. So, if you can mute yourself, that'd be great. Thanks. So minor flooding in this case is minimal or no property damage, but possibly some public threat or inconvenience. Moderate flooding is some inundation of structures or roads near streams, some evacuations of people and or transfer of property to higher elevations. So this minor flooding is our 7 feet now. This is 7.5 feet. Major flooding where it says extensive inundation of structures and roads, this is now 8 feet. And again, I'll put the website in the link in a moment. So in this case, the township's referencing these documents to make the decision to change. They've also said, at least when I talked with Pat anyway, it was said that at the decision to do 6.5 feet back around the 2004 flood was made, according to him, arbitrarily. And so now they said they use drone footage and such to make the decision to raise it based on what they were seeing in the drone footage at the different flood levels. That's again, according to conversations with folks. So what I'm showing you now, so that's what they're comparing to with the National Weather Service. That's what those documents are. This, what I'm showing you, is the Hamburg Township's updated and approved on the November 2nd meeting, the flood response action plan. So this is what tells the Hamburg Township basically what they're going to do at different stages. And so I'm going to kind of walk through a few of these. So up to 6.5 feet, so not yet. This is what is now with the new categories considered bank full according to National Weather Service. So in this case, they're just monitoring. At 6.5 feet, action stage, not flooding yet, according to them, action stage. This is where we're seeing supposedly water begins to spill over the banks, boat docks begin to become submerged. And so what this means is that now we're going to get a notification from the National Weather Service about a flood forecast. Daily monitoring is when the National Weather Service will start monitoring things. The fire and police department will begin physical monitoring of the outside areas. So no boats or anything as far as I know, but there'll be more driving around, things like that. 7 feet, so this is our flood stage now. So it's considered minor flooding. This is where, according to what they're seeing, mapping with the National Weather Service, there's affected damage, yards of homes along the Huron River, Little Ore Lake, and Ore Lake are becoming flooded. And so what's happening now, we have the flood warning. So now they're sending it out over the media at 7 feet. Continue monitoring. It says after reaching 7 feet with a forecast of 7.5 feet, the township supervisor will convene an emergency meeting of the board and request a resolution according to this. This is through the state of Michigan, and this resolution says that one time a year, a township can apply to have a no wake on an affected area. And that would be, in a sense, where in August we had, for example, those of us on Ore Lake, we had the police out on jet skis. That's an example of that. So they instituted this MCL 324. They can do that once a year. And that's based on the state regulations on that one. And so what the township is saying is once we get hit 7 feet with a forecast of 7.5, they'll convene the board to consider a resolution for that. Fire and police are continuing their monitoring. And then at 7.5 feet, now we're at moderate flooding. So you can see we have transitions from affected damage to minor damage, water reaching foundations and crawl spaces on Little Ore and Ore in the river. Roads and flood-prone areas are being covered by floodwaters. So you can see we have more going on. So we still have the warnings, still monitoring, the police are still, and fire department are still doing theirs. And at this point, we can see the township supervisor formally requests a no wake restriction from the Livingston County Sheriff or the emergency manager. And if it's issued, then the action plan outlines what they're going to do. And then later it says what they're going to do. And so at that point, the police will begin monitoring and enforcing the no wake restricted areas. And they're also saying at this point is when they start shutting off grinder pumps and electric services and such if needed. So that is the reasoning behind it and the information from what I've been told, and also the background as to what it actually looks like for what the township is going to do at those different flood stages or those different levels from 6.5, which is action stage, to 7 feet now, which is flood stage, to 7.5 feet, minor flood stage, 7.5 feet is moderate flood stage, 8 feet is now major flooding. So that's the shift. I wanted to show you kind of the background to it. I have had some conversations with Cindy, who I know is on the call now, who's one of our board of trustees, and also Pat. And there has been concerns with the previous flood level in that because the state of Michigan only allows the township to apply for the no wake that they can enforce one time a year, having it at a lower level makes it more likely it'll go into effect earlier, and then they can't use it later if we have higher flooding. So that was also, from my understanding, a consideration for the raise. So that's all of the information as far as I can tell, and I certainly can answer questions to the best of my ability. Like I said, I've had some conversations, but I want to open this up at this point to actually talk and let you hear from all of you, your concerns. So before we do that, I am going to stop recording.